Aquarium heaters like the one that I have right here are some of the most important parts of the equipment that we put in our saltwater and freshwater aquariums, but they are also one of the most failed pieces of equipment that we see in the aquarium hobby. Setting yours up correctly could save you and your tank a lot of frustration and possibly even a tank crash at some point in the future, and these tips are going to help you do just that. These heaters that are built like this for the aquarium industry have a giant flaw, and not a lot of people are talking about it. The problem is that the thermostat is built on the top of the heater up here. Most of these are meant to be run horizontally in a tank like this, where the heat travels from the heater up through the aquarium, and it never gets near this thermostat. But a lot of people run them vertical, and some of these are even meant to be run vertical like this, and heat rises, it comes up to the top and ends up overheating the thermostat and the temperature probe on the inside, and they almost always fail in the on position, and then it ends up overheating the tank and you lose some or all of your inhabitants. When you get your heater and you're ready to set it up, look right here on the side of the heater. This one says that it has a minimum water level, and it's right here, which is telling me that this thermostat and everything can go underneath the water, and this one can be run vertical or horizontal like this. Either way is going to be fine, but some of them can't do that, and this has to be outside of the water, so make sure you're checking your heater and know which kind you have. Some of the more modern heaters on the market, like this one from Higer, this is an 800 watt, have a separate temperature control, which is awesome. But the problem with this particular type is that the temperature probe is still located in here inside the body of the heater. And this causes the same problem as before, where that temperature probe ends up getting overheated over time and it ends up failing, oftentimes in the on position. However, this type of heater is still miles ahead of the other kind, with the temperature probe and the thermostat built into the top of the heater, and running this kind is already a little bit of insurance against this sort of a heater failing, but sometimes they still do. So what do we do about it? In my experience keeping fish tanks of all kinds over the last 25 or so years, I've had 4 heaters fail on me in that time, and all of them failed in exactly the same way. They failed in the on position and ended up making the tank way too hot. Now, after the first time it happened, I started using something else along with the heater, and that was an external temperature controller. Now, the additional 3 that happened after that, it was just a complete heater failure, which is something that does happen, and it's kind of unavoidable. But putting your heater on a completely separate temperature controller like an Inkbird that has its own temperature probe and everything is completely separated away from the heater is very, very good insurance against keeping this from happening. Now, with those other 3 that I was talking about, when they failed, they did fail in the on position. But because I had the Inkbird controller running those heaters, it sensed that the temperature went up and it cut the power to the heaters and it didn't overheat the tank. They still failed, but my tank was protected, and that's the most important part. This tank that you see behind me actually has 3 layers of protection from this because I'm running 2 separate heaters. I'm running a heater controller, it's the Inkbird that I was talking about, and then I'm monitoring that system with Hydros automation. So I have 2 temperature probes in my tank monitoring the tank at all times. If the Inkbird overheats, the Hydros will shut it down. If a heater fails and overheats the tank, the Inkbird will shut it down before the Hydros does. There's absolutely no chance that my tank is going to overheat from a failed heater. And you want to be sure, if you're going to get a temperature controller, that you get the right kind. Some of the Inkbirds out there on the market have a heating and a cooling outlet for people in hotter climates who need to run a chiller. If you don't need a chiller, that's not the one you need to get. You need to get the one that has 2 normal outlets that don't say heating and cooling, and running 2 separate heaters instead of just one is going to give you another layer of redundancy. That way, if one of them fails, hopefully it won't fail in the on position and it just stops working. The other one is going to be able to maintain the temperature of your tank until you can find that there's a problem and get it fixed. This has been working for me for the last 15 years. I've had the same 2 Eheim 200 watt heaters on the same Inkbird, and in the last couple of years I've added the Hydros automation, and I've not had a single problem or a single instance with this system with a heater failing or overheating my system. There are different types of heaters that you can get, like titanium models, that don't have a thermostat or a temperature probe built into them at all. It's just a simple heating element, and you run it with an external device like a Hydros or a Neptune, or even simply just an Inkbird. The main point that I'm trying to get across to you here is build redundancy into your heating and cooling system for your aquarium. It might just save your tank. If you found this information useful, please subscribe to the channel and check out the video that's on the screen right now. I think you'd find it pretty interesting.